be pretty busy right now.
Okay, and we're live. Aloha.
Yorana.
Yorana.
Aloha kako. For all of you who are just coming onto the show, we'd like to see your names in the chat and tell us where you're coming in from, whether it's from New York or from Michigan or from Vegas. I know we have a lot of people coming in from Vegas and from California. And then, of course, from all of French Polynesia. Aloha mai kako. Please come on in. Let's see. We've got a couple more minutes before we're actually going to start. So let's see what happens in the chat. And thank you so much for coming. But I really, really want to thank our guests, especially Mo'ohono Niva, our archaeologist from Ra'eatea, who was so kind to us a few years ago when we were down there. He took us to Taputapuatea, and he took us to Tainui. He took us to all the places where we have many, many things to learn. So I'm so glad, Mo'ohono, that you're here tonight. And let's see what else. I don't see anybody telling us where they're from yet. But maybe that's we'll see them on the Facebook. But also Hironui, thank you so much for bringing Mo'ohono on and doing the great film that we're going to see some film clips tonight, right? I know it's been such a busy week for everybody, all kinds of things going on, but I'm really, really glad to see both of you here and that we're going to hear from Tahiti. We only heard from Hawaii so far. Now we're going to hear from Tahiti. And then next week we'll hear from Aotearoa. And after that we'll go to Tonga. But that special relationship between Hawaii and Tahiti, you know, when in our chants in Hawaii, whenever we talk about Tahiti, it's the land of the famous, fabulous people who are the ancestors, who are the cousins, who know all these fabulous things. And of course, your dances, of course, and your songs. But I want to say thank you so much for joining us in this. And I know we're going to have a good time with all of our ancestors talking to us and telling us what to say. Hironui, I turn to you.
Lilikalā, voilà, juste une petite introduction. Nous sommes dans ce 4e épisode du webinaire, grâce bien sûr au Centre des études comparatives à l'Université de Hawaï et bien sûr à la présidente de ce centre, Lilikalā, encore Maruru et Maruru de nous accueillir ici, dans, on peut dire, dans ce monde virtuel. L'occasion de saluer tous nos amis, tous ceux qui viennent nous regarder, nous rejoindre pendant cette 1h30 de webinaire, mais également de remercier la fondatrice Gladys Brandt, c'est dans le nom bien sûr du centre, et elle bien sûr qui nous a donné cette possibilité de nous recueillir, on pourrait dire, de nous rassembler partout dans ce qu'on appelle le triangle polynésien. Ouais. Alors de Hawaï, on a entendu beaucoup parler de Hawaï ces derniers épisodes. Là, aujourd'hui, nous allons bien sûr découvrir avec Mo'ohono, notre archéologue, les mythes de la création de Tahiti, des îles sous le vent de Tahiti, on va dire les îles de la société. Et bien sûr, je suis là pour traduire en anglais, également, bien sûr, en français, mais en majorité, c'est en anglais. Et j'ai également pu réaliser 2 petits films que nous allons partager. L'occasion également de diversifier un peu ce monde médiatique que nous avons à notre portée aujourd'hui. Alors, I just wanted to once again thank you, Lilikalā, and of course Gladys, Brandt, and everything that's we've been able to put together to bring us closer. You know, and that's one of your goals for many years. And today it's becoming a reality in a virtual reality, in a sense, in virtual world. And as I mentioned in French, we're so honored to be able to share and to learn. And anyway, we're happy. En tout cas, on est très heureux d'être là ce soir.
I see that we're also getting in people coming in from Calais from Waiakea, Lala from Arizona, Puanani from Valdez, Alaska, Michael from Louisiana, Kathy from Sonoma County, California, Santos from Phoenix, Shauna from Texas, Poppy from Oklahoma City. Wow. Vanessa from Los Angeles, Christina from Benton, Louisiana. Oh, and we have Joanna from Kamanaiki Valley in Kalihi, Oahu. I know we have quite a few people from Oahu because everybody's telling me they're going to watch tonight. But these are the names that are coming in from the Facebook chat. not the Zoom chat, the Facebook chat.
Alors,
Yes.
juste de dire qu'il y a plusieurs plateformes. Ce direct est diffusé, comme elle dit, sur Facebook, sur le site, la page Facebook de l'Université de Hawaï, l'école de Hawaii inuiākea, mais également sur d'autres plateformes comme OEVTV, OHA, et bien sûr sur Zoom. Nous sommes en ce moment sur Zoom. Et voilà, alors on attend que les gens arrivent à se connecter. Il n'est que 19h, on va attendre encore quelques minutes. Et on espère bien sûr avoir des personnes qui vont nous regarder de Tahiti. So I was just saying that glad to have everybody, but we want more people from Tahiti as well, you know. And we're trying to communicate as much as possible. It's difficult. 7 o'clock at night. A lot of people get home, maybe they tired or something like that. But we're gonna keep going, and hopefully the word gets out. And
Yes.
so, yeah.
Well, I know that we had the word sent out on Monday to remind everybody. We also have Kalea. Mo'ohono, you remember Kalea? She came with us to oh, that was in 2014. She was there. You didn't meet her that time, but Hironui, you met Kalea from Eva Beach, and then we've got Billy from Kilauea, Kauai. Tevita is coming in from Kahuku, so that's hey Tevita, mahalo nui.
Wow.
Janice from Kalaniana Ole Avenue in Hilo. Aloha, Janice. Yes, very good, very good. Okay. Well, let's see now. Is there, you're going to show 2 films, right?
Yes. So.
Okay. And here we are putting up the slide about Mo'ohono. Hironui, you know him from the longest. I know him as a great archaeologist from Tahiti who knew so much about Tapu Tapu Atea, but you know his real story. Can you tell us his story, please?
Still trying to figure it out, this guy. Like we've been working for the last few years together on a lot of different projects, and I've been able to work by his side and learn as much as I can from him. I'm still learning, and of course he brings in I guess a different approach, a different perspective from an archaeological standpoint, but of course he's been trained in a way that is going to give us insight in ways that normally we're not used to seeing, right? So that's why I'm really happy that he joined us, and of course I'll ask him some questions in French, but he speaks a little English, so he understands what I say. Alors, je voulais juste te dire de présenter Mo'ohono Paul Niva, on l'appelle aussi archéologue ici, tahitien, il faut que je le dise, hein, il n'y en a pas beaucoup, mais ils sont là. Juste à côté de moi, alors, j'ai eu le plaisir de travailler sur plusieurs projets et que j'ai pu bien sûr accompagner Mo'ohono, et que voilà, ce soir, on va partager un peu les expériences que lui, il a vécues, mais aussi ce que nous avons tous les deux appris. Hein. So I just wanted to say once again that in regards to preparing this, Mo'ohono, in his studies, he learned about the marae, but he learned about genealogy as well. And that's very, very important in regards to understanding places. And so he brings that perspective to the plate, and which gives us something else, because a lot of people, they have particular references, other archaeologists' reports and things like that. But he's gone to like the families, he's gone to the genealogy, the chants, the songs, and to find out more. And that's the kind of perspective that he brings. Alors voilà, une petite présentation en français. Quand je disais, ta perspective, elle est tout à fait, je pourrais dire, on peut pas. Voilà, on a une chance. Pour moi, on a une chance parce que ta démarche au niveau de l'archéologie est vraiment basée sur la généalogie. Et là, on retrouve beaucoup d'éléments pour vraiment comprendre un peu le site. Tu peux nous expliquer un peu plus ça?
Oui, donc, dans mon travail, dans le paradigme que je réalise dans mon travail, c'est surtout, je fais des analyses par rapport aux traditions orales, par rapport aux généalogies. Et j'essaie de faire des études comparatives souvent, non seulement généalogie, mais aussi au-delà de la de Tahiti. Et j'adore voyager à Hawaï, j'adore aller en Nouvelle-Zélande, j'adore aller à l'île de Pâques pour pouvoir un peu comparer, étudier et comparer nos sociétés, comment elles fonctionnaient, voir les dysfonctionnements et comprendre cette société.
Okay.
Anglais?
Yeah, so I have as you mentioned, so we are in a center of comparative studies. I guess you could say comparative studies here in this, and that's what he's been doing, he said. So Mo'ohono is not only a Tahitian archaeologist that lives here in Raiatea and Tahiti, but he's traveled to many different places. Hawaii, he studied Mariah or temples, or heiau in Hawaii. He's been to Aotearoa, he's been to Rapa Nui.
Ahu.
And of course, understanding these, he's done his comparative, I guess you could say, study in essence, in his analysis. And so he's bringing, of course, genealogy, oral traditions, bringing that to the table as well. And of course, visiting and comparing all the other places to bring up pretty much, pretty interesting perspective. And so I think that's in a nutshell what he said.
Okay, Vikai.
Do you have any questions before we start our presentation, Lilikalā?
I think we should just jump right into it. I know you have some films to show us and you have some really great presentations. So I want to make sure that we go right to it. So tell us what we're going to see tonight.
Okay. So I'm gonna open up our presentation here. Okay. There. All right. So the title of Mo'ohono is going to be presenting. Okay.
Avant de commencer, j'aimerais quand même parler des mythes dans le monde polynésien.
Okay. So of course we're talking about the myth creation myths. A mythology, I guess you could say, in the Society Island.
Aussi, j'aimerais bien donner une approche par rapport à moi. Je ne suis pas anthropologue ni ethnographe. Par contre, mon travail d'archéologie m'a amené à beaucoup réfléchir sur ces questions.
Okay, so once again, he's an archaeologist. He's not an anthropologist. He's not an ethnologist. But because of his work, he's been, of course, having to understand those aspects and those areas, in essence, to be able to understand his work.
Et l'anthropologie, l'ethnographie, l'ethnologie et surtout la langue sont des éléments importants dans notre société.
And of course, paying attention to language, that's very, very, very important to understanding. So that's his I guess you could say, his method, in essence, of...
Et sans ces analyses-là, on ne peut pas, sans comprendre la langue, on ne peut pas comprendre une société.
Yeah. So without understanding the language, you can't understand a civilization.
Et surtout une société basée sur les traditions orales.
And especially when we talk about here in our inuiākea, when we talk about understanding the people, we have to understand the language. Even more so because we have an oral tradition here.
Bien que les Européens, ils appellent ça tradition orale, qui veut dire tradition, transmission, chez nous, on appelle ça prautupuna.
And so, of course, the word oral tradition, that's something that they told us, tradition orale. But for us, it is prautupuna, which is the speech or the language of our ancestors.
Et il faut comprendre ces paroles pour pouvoir ensuite bien analyser les éléments qu'on voit actuellement.
And understanding that part is so important to understand everything that we see out in the physical world.
Pour parler des mythes, on va essayer d'oublier nos concepts, notre modèle, notre mode de pensée, notre mode de vie d'aujourd'hui, essayer de se détacher de ce modèle qu'on a à l'occidental.
Okay, so of course we'll be talking about ancient times, we'll be talking about our tupuna. So we have to try to have our mindset during that time. And so I guess you could say the concept of what we see and do today is probably going to influence how we see in the past. So we have to try to get away of what's happening today and try to, I guess, put ourselves back into how it used to be.
Et c'est à partir de là qu'on va commencer à comprendre les mythes, comment ils se sont construits.
And then, of course, we'll be able to understand these creation stories and how they were created or how they were built.
Dans notre présentation, on va pas tout présenter parce que ce serait trop long, mais on va sortir les éléments importants des mythes et ensuite on va les structurer pour que les gens puissent s'approprier, puissent comprendre nos mythes.
Okay, so we're not going to go through every single myth. It'll take us several days to be able to do that. So we're going to highlight some of the myths that we of course we learned about and highlight some of the common elements that kind of like link everything together. So that it's in a way we can understand it a little bit better. So I think that's his goal.
Et principalement comprendre ces mythes-là, de la manière qu'on a avec Hiro construit les mythes, on est rentré un peu dans un paradigme dont on a structuré pour que vous puissiez vous en approprier.
Okay, and so we did our best to I guess you could say structure, make it in a way that you can understand it better. Okay,
Donc ici, on a le fameux Hawaii inuiākea, le fameux triangle polynésien qu'on appelle aussi Naporoeha, qui est au-dessus Hawaï, la Nouvelle-Zélande, Aotearoa, l'île de Pâques, au centre, les îles dispersées des Tuamotu et toutes les autres îles.
So we want to first of all situate ourselves for those of you who are watching us from all over the world, to make sure everybody understands where we're coming from. So we have the Polynesian Triangle with Hawaii in the north, Aotearoa, New Zealand in the southwest, and of course Easter Island all in the east. And right in the middle, we have this group of islands where we live, right? And in the center, we have the Society Islands, an archipelago. So that's what you have.
Donc ici, on a les îles La Société, Tuamotu, les marquises qu'on appelle Hironui et Nana, Ma'areva, souvent ils disent aussi Mangareva, et tout appelle les Australes. Tout ça appartient à, c'est une société, vous allez voir, qui est très très multiculturelle, on sait au moins dans les Tuamotu, il y a environ 7 ou 8 aires culturelles.
Okay, so we're trying to bunch everything together because we all, I guess we could say, live together here in what we call French Polynesia. But you have to understand French Polynesia within French Polynesia, you have very, very distinct cultures. So we talk about Hironui Nana, that's the Marquesan culture. Their language is different. Ma'areva, also called Mangareva. The Tuamotu Islands, these are atolls, about 70 or so atolls. They have 9 different languages and 9 different cultures within. And Tuha'apa, that's the islands that are more toward the south, and they're closely related to some of the Cook Islands. And of course, Society Islands. This is the first islands that I guess you can see the explorers have brought to the forefront. And I think that's the focus, really, about the midst of that particular part.
Donc, on va s'intéresser aux îles de sa société, composées en 2 groupes, les îles du vent et les îles sous le vent.
Okay, so in the Society Islands, there's 2 groups of islands. Of course, geographically separated. There's one that we call the Windward Islands, where you have Tahiti, Moorea, Mānoa, Mehitia. And of course, you have the Leeward Islands, where you have a lot of the islands that everybody is kind of familiar with when it comes to creation, I guess you could say, stories. We have Raiatea, which is also called Hawaii, Taha'a, Bora Bora, Wahine, Mopiti, all these islands. And those are the 2 islands that he's going to be, I guess you could say, 2 groups that are going to be concentrated because they all share pretty much the same stories of creation.
Okay, on y va. Donc, on vous a mis cette carte pour que vous puissiez voir comment est étendue la Polynésie française au sein de l'Europe. Et on voit que ça part de Londres jusqu'à ici, c'est où ça, en Turquie, et en haut vers la Russie. Donc, c'est énorme, le territoire est énorme.
Okay, so just once again, another matter of perspective to understand, our islands are spread out on the map, as you can see, as big as Europe. So the Marquesas you can see are in Scandinavia. Australs are like, near France, and as far as Turkey and the Great Britain. So big extent, a very, very big, vast area, of course, of where we live.
Donc, on va principalement s'intéresser à une grande auteure du 19e siècle, 19e, 20e siècle, qui est Te Henry. Te Henry est la petite fille de John Marriage Osmond, qui était arrivé avec les missionnaires, n'est-ce pas, à bord du Dauphin.
Yeah. So one of the reference books, of course, we could find a lot of these creation stories. One of them is Tahiti aux Temps Anciens, and written by the granddaughter of one of the original missionaries that arrived in Tahiti. And so she was able to, I guess you could say, constitute from a lot of his notes this particular book throughout pretty much her whole life. So.
Ouais. Donc, elle a quand même reconstitué, ce qui est un énorme effort pour moi, parce que sinon, ces sources étaient perdues à jamais. Sans ce travail, on n'aurait peut-être jamais su cette histoire-là, ces incantations, ces récits. Certes, certains disent avec des défauts, mais ils sont quand même présents.
So once again, he just acknowledges the work of Taʻaroa Henry, the granddaughter of this missionary, and being able to collect and write a book from notes that were gathered from, I guess you could say, recordings or documentation of particular songs, of particular prayers and things like that. So enormous work, and one of our main reference books. So just on an anecdote, you know, it's one of, I guess you could say, the reference book that a lot of people in everywhere use when it comes to ancient Tahiti.
Le deuxième livre sur lequel on va s'intéresser, c'est Mariah, qui est la fille de Hironui et Alexandre Salmon. Mariah est la fille de Alexandre Salmon, qui était un étranger qui est arrivé. Sa mère va porter le nom de Aritaimai. Aritaimai qui est la fille, donc Hironui Aritaimai, c'est la même personne. C'est la fille une des descendants du grand chef des Marama, de Moria, vallée de Opunho. Et aussi, elle descend aussi de la lignée des Teva, de Papara.
Okay, so the other reference book that we use, and a lot of people use for their creation stories here in Tahiti, is it's actually from Mānoa Taʻaroa. She actually, I guess you could say her daughter transcribed. These are the things that she had learned. And of course, this person, Mānoa Taʻaroa, was daughter of Ho and Alexander Salmon. And so Alexander Salmon was a foreigner who arrived, and they married. And of course, this daughter, Mānoa Taʻaroa, she married Pomare to become the last queen, I guess you could say. But she is also a descendant, as he had mentioned, of the Marama clan of Moria, and of course the Teva clan of the south, which is one of the highest, where they have most of the high chiefs, and you could say, yeah. And so quite a very, very important person in regards to, as a reference.
So donc, la troisième personne dont on va parler beaucoup aussi, c'est Kenneth Emory, qui était un anthropologue, un archéologue, ethnologue aussi. Il a travaillé sur toute la Polynésie aussi. Hein. Alors, ce qui était bien avec cet archéologue-là, c'est qu'il parlait le tahitien, le marquisien. Il parlait le tahitien, le marquisien. Il parlait aussi les langues un peu papoues. Hein. C'est des gens qui étaient capables vraiment de discuter avec les gens du coin, de chaque endroit où ils allaient, et de comprendre les histoires qu'on leur racontait. Il a fait une multitude d'articles, et il a aussi justement enregistré beaucoup de généalogie.
Okay, so Kenneth Emory, I think for those who are archaeologists or who are very familiar with the Bishop Museum, he was not only an archaeologist, but also an anthropologist, ethnologist. And of course, he, as Mo'ohona said, he spoke many, many languages. And so in a lot of the research that he had done in the islands, not only here in Tahiti, but all the other islands, he was able to really, really understand and ask, I guess, the right questions, so that he could actually record a lot of things, and mostly a lot of oral chants, a lot of recited genealogies. And so a lot of, I guess you could say, knowledge was gathered thanks to this person. So he also wanted to acknowledge. And so he is an oceanologue, I guess you could say. You had the Egyptologue, an expert in Oceania, just like Mo'ono. He's one of those two.
Donc, voilà, c'est ce que Hiro disait, hein, on est des océanistes. Hein. On travaille sur toute la Polynésie, pas seulement française, mais ce qu'on appelle en Océanie, hein, à partir des territoires papous jusque mélanésiens, polynésiens. On est capable d'amener notre savoir, notre connaissance, hein, nos petites connaissances pour comprendre ces anciennes sociétés.
And like Mo'ono, Kenneth Emory, he was the person that was and one of the experts in all of Oceania. So being able to do comparative studies between different places is one of his strong points, and this, he's one of the references today. So I'm going to continue on. So you can hear one of the chants, c'est une des chants that he recorded.
Donc ce chant a été enregistré avec un phonographe pendant ses travaux dans l'archipel. Il est venu ici, il a récolté ces chants-là.
So wow, so he recorded with the, I guess you guys one of the phonographs in the 1920s, yeah. And you can hear the chanting style. This is a genealogy being decided. Pretty interesting.
Une autre personne qu'on aimerait bien remercier, ça va être Telei Tuatini Jean-Marc Pombrun. C'était l'ancien directeur du musée de Tahiti et des îles qui a écrit un livre sur la naissance de Hawaï, illustré par Jean-Luc Bousquet, qu'on aimerait bien aussi remercier parce que beaucoup de nos illustrations viennent de ce livre.
And so another person that we would like to thank, he unfortunately passed away in 2011. He's my cousin, and he's also a good friend of Mohono. He gathered a lot of information in regards to creation stories, and he wrote a book dedicated to his daughter, so she could understand creation stories of Tahiti. And the book called the Naissance de Hawaii, which is the birth of Hawaii, was geniusly illustrated by his good friend Jean-Luc Bousquet, which we like also to say acknowledge, because we're using a lot of his illustrations, of course, for this presentation. Un grand merci à Jean-Luc Bousquet pour nous permettre d'utiliser tes illustrations.
Ok, on avance. Donc, les mythes dans les îles de la Sortie, il y a plusieurs types de mythes.
So in the Society Islands, you have several types of myths, I guess, creation stories.
Donc, vous avez les mythes. Donc, vous avez les mythes où une personne est à l'origine.
So you have a myth that's where you have a creation story where you have a person that's like the main person inside it, one person.
Ensuite, vous avez les mythes où c'est à partir des éléments naturels que tout se crée.
Okay, so another origin story is where you have different elements, natural elements that create everything.
Et c'est ces deux mythes qu'on va essayer, on en a pris deux ce soir, c'est à partir de ces deux mythes qu'on va développer notre présentation ce soir.
And then we're going to be focusing on these two different styles, I guess you could say, of creation stories. But
mais il existe aussi d'autres mythes, le mythe d'origine des terres, hein, c'est-à-dire mythe où on pêche les îles, c'est-à-dire l'histoire de Roux qui va pêcher les îles sous le vent, ou l'histoire de Maui qui pêche le sud de l'île de Aotearoa.
Of course, there's other myth stories within our realm, I guess you could say, of French Polynesia, where you have fish, islands being fished out, and of course, where you have Hawaii as a place, mythical place, I guess, of origin.
Donc, le dernier mythe, évidemment, c'est celui de Hawaii comme origine. Hein. Ça, on le retrouve partout aussi, ça.
And of course, that Hawaii, that's something you would find in other places as well, outside of French Polynesia.
Donc, le chant de la création, ça a été enregistré par Teru Henry à la page 334. Hein. Les sources proviennent de l'année 1822. Ils ont été dit par Paiori de Puropura, les informateurs de l'époque, hein, Vaiai de Puropura aussi, et Patio de Moorea.
Okay, so the first creation story that we'll be focusing on is from a song. It's from a chant, a creation chant. And Teura Henry has it in her book, in page 334, for those who want to see all the details of it. Okay, so this is dated back from 1822. And they have three different sources of people with the same chant, I guess, from Purapura, from Moorea. So you can see it from the islands of the Windward Island, Leeward Islands, it's actually spread out to the Windward Islands. So a lot of different of these high priests and like very important people all share the same creation chant.
Ce qui est important lorsqu'on va sur ces chants-là, c'est que ces chants-là proviennent souvent, leur origine vient souvent des îles sous le vent.
And a lot of the creation chants that we have recorded in our books all originated from the Leeward Islands. So Popora, Yatea, things like that. Okay. So before we get into reading these, I guess you can see this ancestral knowledge, we wanted to share a video, a film of a song. It's like a prayer, but of creation, the creation story. Okay?
Donc, on va vous présenter un film, avant qu'on puisse entrer à l'intérieur des mythes, on va vous présenter un film pour que vous puissiez un peu vous mettre un peu dans le mode un peu ancien des mythes, et c'est un très beau film. Hein.
Okay, so it's a Himenid Ru'au, it's an ancient style of song, and it, as Mohono said, so that you can get into that, I guess, mindset of understanding and, of course, treating our ancestral knowledge with a lot of respect and honor. So we'll ask Malia if she can. This is a time to play the video.
C'est eux seulement qui entendent.
Malia, we can't hear the sound.
You weren't able to hear sound?
No.
Okay.
Can you replay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Coming.
If you want, I can sing it.
It's better? It's okay?
Yes, good.
I just bring back a lot of memories. This is one of the first songs I learned while I became a member of Horuru. And it was a song written for members of Horuru. And this is the first song that, and while I was voyaging on many of the different voyages, this is one of the songs that we all shared everywhere we went to present to people who we were. And so this is quite appropriate because, you know, we talk about Taʻaroa as being the main person in regards to our creation stories. And so that's going to be one of the things that we'll be talking about throughout, of course, this first part. Comme je disais tout à l'heure, ça c'est une belle chanson, chanson Ruau Himene Ruau que j'ai appris grâce à l'association Horuru, dont les membres ont écrit cette chanson. Et bien sûr, dans tous les voyages sur les la chanson que nous avons partagée, et qui bien sûr relate surtout sur Taʻaroa que nous allons bien sûr parler. Aujourd'hui, nous allons parler de ces mythes de création avec Taʻaroa. Okay, so now I think I can come back to sharing my screen, right? Is that correct? Okay. So I'm going to come back to, voila. Okay.
Thank you, Mo'ohana. Thank you, Hironui.
Yeah, that's, so as, alors on va commencer. So now we're going to start to read and share, and he's going to give his analysis. Okay.
Okay.
So the song starts like this. Taʻaroa te tupuna o te mau atua atoa. Mana te mau mea atoa I hamanihia. Ce qui veut dire, Taʻaroa est l'unique, hein, l'ancêtre de tous les dieux, il créa tout. Donc là, Taʻaroa apparaît en premier. C'est vraiment l'homme, le dieu, et il est présent.
And so once again, we talked about the different types of creation stories, and Taʻaroa is the one, the only one, I guess you could say, in this very first sentence that you see in this chant, that he is the answer of all Atua, and he's the one who created all things.
Harmony. Et maintenant, on va voir un peu le mot utilisé ici, c'est harmony.
Okay, so we see the word in the first sentence, we see harmony. And so in our translation, it means created, right? In essence, that's what we think.
Yeah, but no. No, but because harmony, en français, harmony veut dire construire. Harmony ne veut pas vraiment dire créer. Et qu'on va voir par la suite ce que ça veut dire créer.
So of course he's referring to this word harmony, and understand, okay, harmony in our translations, we found that harmony doesn't really mean create, it means to build. Right? So that's one of the first elements that he wants to make sure that everybody understands. Okay, so in this creation stories, we're talking about building something.
On ne parle pas de création. Pourtant, le texte s'appelle le chant de création.
So we're not talking about creation, we're talking about building, even though the song is titled the creation song. Okay.
Donc, on voit bien que le verbiage, que parler, c'est un élément essentiel de comprendre la langue.
Okay, so once again, understanding the words, and I think we saw that early, and how important that we understand, you know, the words to give us the ideas that we, you know, of course. So I'm going to continue. Il faut aller plus vite, je pense.
Donc Taʻaroa, il était seul. Il est tout seul. C'est le maître. Il n'avait pas de père, il n'avait pas de mère, il n'avait rien. Et il était dans une enveloppe et il restait là depuis la période depuis des temps immémoriaux.
Okay, so as you can
Tahitian?
see,
Can you read in Tahitian?
Taʻaroa I tupu tō wininoa. Aita tōna metua, aore metua tāne, aore metua hene. Whae ana ona I roto I te pō ui, I te pō tahito, te pō hare mai ei whae ana ona I roto.
Sounds better, hein? Sounds better. Alors voilà, dans la création dans cette histoire, dans ce mythe, in this creation story, we are talking about he was all alone. So he was his own father, he was his own mother, as it says in this chant, and he was in solitude for many years.
Il avait plusieurs formes. Une des phrases que je retiens, Hein, j'ai retenu une forme dans le chant qui dit que Taʻaroa a plusieurs formes.
Okay, and so one of the main another element that from the song is that Taʻaroa had different forms, many different forms. So here he is all alone, but he had different forms.
Donc il était le dessus.
He was above.
Il était en dessous.
Underneath.
Il était aussi
you can't see it.
Le Whareatua, la pierre.
It was also stone, rocks.
Et il était aussi le Whareatua, la maison des dieux.
But he was also the house of all gods. So in this part of the chant, we understand that he had several elements, but he had distinctly 4 different. All that's above, all that's below, everything that was rock, and the House of Actua, as you can see, described. Now, once again, thank you to Jean-Luc Pousquet for the beautiful images.
Taʻaroa, il va ouvrir sa coquille, hein, qu'on appelle rumia.
So he was enclosed in nothingness, but he was still enclosed in what we call an egg.
Ouais,
and he opens his egg shell, the shell, and this shell, his name is called rumia.
Et il sera et pour mon œil et pour tintini et pour toto au rumia te o tawapa o Taʻaroa. So, donc à l'intérieur de ça, hein, on voit qu'il y a plusieurs pots. Il y a ce qu'on appelle le pot tintini, le pot toto, mais au fait dans le concept polynésien il y avait plusieurs pots. Il y avait le pot maramama, il y avait le pot toto, il y a le pot tintini, il y a le pot popori, plusieurs types de pots. Mais tout se passe dans le pot tintini et le pot toto. Pot tintini qui veut dire pour la nuit multiple, riche, fertile, et pot toto qui veut dire la nuit sombre.
Okay, so in this universe, there is absolute dark. There's different types of darkness, right? And so he listed all the darkness, the different types of po, as you can see, po. And during this time of, building, you have 2 main ones. You have po tini, which is the so it's multiple, it's abundant, it's fervent, and so that's the night of, growth. And then of course you have the to ta'o was
somber.
So very, 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 very dark to ta'o. And those 2 different po are when a lot of what is being created in this particular song. Okay?
So we have on a le pot tinitini et ensuite on a 2 pots, on a le pot tinitini et le pot toto et on va passer du pot tinitini au pot toto.
Okay, so from the great nothingness where he was alone and then where he starts to build things, he goes from po tini growing, and then of course then you come out to ta'o. So these are the 2, you can say, phases of po, where all of this creation or building is happening.
Donc, on a fait un schéma pour que vous puissiez comprendre un peu tout ce champ de création, comment il est construit. Donc, on a la coquille, évidemment, qui est rumia, hein, la fameuse coquille. Ensuite, on a la petite vallée, Haïti. On a Tuamotu, qui est la roche. Et on a une autre enveloppe où Taʻaroa est confiné à l'intérieur.
So we're going through the chant pretty quickly, because it's actually pretty long. A lot of the main stages, in essence. So he opens up, rumia becomes the outer shell, and then after that he comes back in to grow. And before he goes back in, he creates Whaiti, the smaller valley, which is that enclosed. And within Whaiti, you have Tumuiti, which is that rock, and the Tepa, which is another kind of shell enclosing him within. And it's in this particular period or time where he starts to mature.
Ensuite, il sépare, hein, il va commencer à séparer les Tumuiti qui va devenir un rocher, hein, et la coquille va devenir, donc Rumia va devenir la fondation du sol.
So, in essence, as we saw that particular picture, Tuamotu separates itself from the shell and it becomes a rock, as you saw it. Yeah. And the shell that we saw, that's Rumia, that's on the outside, that becomes actually the foundation for the soil. Okay, so that's, okay, and then?
Donc Taʻaroa brise en morceaux, hein, les empile, hein, et il va en faire du sable, la racine, et il va se tenir debout, hein, dessus, et il va appeler l'origine qu'on appelle Tetu.
Okay, so all of these things that we saw earlier, he's going to break it all apart, and then he's going to build, and he's going to stack them up together, and then you have rock, you have sand, you have the roots, and then he stands all the way on the top of it, and he calls this Tetumu, the origin.
À l'intérieur de Taʻaroa aussi, on peut, et non seulement on a des, il représentait de l'environnement, Nia, Raro, le Whareatua, tout ce qui est matériel, le tangible, mais il va être aussi l'intangible, mémoire, pensée, concentration et observation.
So we saw his transformation. First, we saw things that were, I guess you could say, physical, on top, underneath, the rock, and the house. And then things that are, I guess you could say, intangible, are actually maturing within him. And so we have Meharu, which is memory, Mana'o, which is thought, Tutonu, which is like concentration, and Hi'o, observation. So these are also elements that grow within, and of course, into his maturity. And so as Onata'ata, Iite Whenua. So he is the knowledge of the land.
Of the land and the men. Et des hommes aussi. Onata'ata, il est le savoir de la terre et des hommes. Hein. Et les hommes vont pouvoir... On a l'impression qu'on joue sur les hommes et des éléments, hein, intangibles. Hein.
Mais séparés.
Séparés, ouais.
Okay, so in essence, when you talk about the land, you're talking about also of men, in a sense, because they're the same, that's according to him. Oops.
Voilà. Et il va faire de Tumunui, Tumunui, il va faire, alors que c'était Tumuiti normalement, il va faire de Tumunui comme étant l'homme associé à la terre.
Okay, so once he's finished that portion and you have all these different elements, then he's gonna create, I guess you could say, or build Tumunui, the root, and that's gonna be the male portion, I guess. So this is where we're talking about, where we finally see, I guess you could say, the opposite, the duality in regards to a creation story. So Tumunui is the root, and he is the male counterpart.
Et il va faire de Papa la terre comme étant la femme de Tumunui.
And the rock that you had, he's going to make that the wife of Tumunui. So she takes on the name of Papa Raha Raha. So you have Tumunui and Papa, who then, of course, become a couple. And of course, they unite.
Mais ce n'était pas facile parce que quand il va donner les ordres, ces derniers vont refuser.
Oh, okay, so he creates, I guess he builds from the roots, and he builds Tumunui and Paparaha, and then they don't listen to him. Why
ils veulent pas ici parce que ils sont les éléments essentiels, c'est eux les origines, c'est pas Taʻaroa.
Okay, so Taʻaroa is actually is asking them to come and, I guess you could say, create all other things. And so, but they don't listen, according to him. So he calls them, come to me, let's, come together and create things, I guess. But they don't listen, according to
Mais ils vont le faire. Donc, c'est à l'intérieur de Taʻaroa, justement, tout est à l'intérieur de Taʻaroa, la pluie, les forces météorologiques, tout était dans ses mains.
Ça, c'est, on parle bien sûr de Tumunui et de Paparaha.
Ouais,
okay.
Non.
So, from Tumunui and Paparaha, all other elements was within Taʻaroa's hand. Beautiful illustration. Because so, according to the chant, te roto ia Taʻaroa te mo peu atua, te veru, te hua, te te, te roto ana e tona rima. So all the storms and all the sea, the wind, and the rain, and all were within his hands.
Météorologique. Et là, à partir de là, les éléments se sont formés, hein, les éléments naturels, les éléments intangibles, mémoire, pensée. Tumunui et te papa s'accouplent, même si il défie Taʻaroa, mais il y a un soir qui va apparaître qu'on appelle Tata'u no te po e tupura atua.
So after all the elements are gathered, after Tumunui and Paparaharaha come together with all the elements surrounding them, then it becomes a different night. According to him, it's the night of Tata'u no te po e tupura atua.
Donc, si on traduit cette phrase Tata'u no te po, on peut traduire de deux manières.
Okay, so if you try to translate this, there's actually several meanings and two distinct meanings to this particular phrase.
Tata'u veut dire incantation la nuit.
Tata'u means, I guess, a chant at night.
Mais ça veut aussi dire la nuit de tatouage.
But it also means the night where you have tatau, which is tattoos done.
Donc, c'est la nuit où les dieux se développent.
And this is the night where the Atua, all the gods, develop, I guess, to grow.
To grow.
Okay, so two meanings, interesting.
Et après avoir créé les dieux, il va créer l'environnement. Et c'est avec ses plumes qu'il va, on dit, a wewe te hururu a Taʻaroa, oia te tumura au, oia te ra au torotoro, oia te whiipu, oia te ruperipue ni at whenua. C'est-à-dire que à partir de ces plumes qu'il va secouer sur la terre, il y aura tout l'environnement qui va se mettre en place, c'est-à-dire les arbres, les racines, les feuilles, les bananes rouges, hein, tous les éléments, enfin tout ce qui est environnement qu'on va se mettre en place sur la terre.
So after that night of Tatau, where the gods and Atu are created, then Taʻaroa with his feathers, I guess, spreads it all over the place to create what we call our environment. So a lot of the trees, the plants, and everything that grows on the, yeah. So that's that particular part of the chant.
Et la dernière phase de ce champ de création, c'est Tumura et Whenua qui se met en place, qui va tout maintenir, qui installe et qui stabilise tout cet environnement.
Okay, so as you can see, the very last part of the chant, we have our famous octopus, Tumura e Whenua, who actually holds everything together within this universe. So she sits atop and she holds everything below.
Et qui va maintenir,
and she's going to stabilize everything so that it exists.
Voilà. Donc, de la période de Taʻaroa, hein, qui continue, on a la naissance des dieux. Ensuite, on a la période donc, qui devient le ciel des dieux. Et dans le même temps, c'est dans cette période, juste après aussi, dans la période de Taʻaroa, donc la nuit sombre, que les hommes vont être créés. Les hommes apparaissent.
The period of Taʻaroa goes on, right? Then you have the night of the gods, as we just talked about. And then we come back to Taʻaroa and then come back to it, so that then we can create the humans.
Ouais, the humans.
Voilà.
Donc, c'est surtout pendant la période de Taʻaroa que les hommes sont créés, et surtout, il était avec tout, avec le Dieu tout.
And so, Taʻaroa is I guess how many builds, but he doesn't build alone. He doesn't build man alone. He says he has two. So you can see, tu ma Taʻaroa ya ite hamani ra'ahia e ta'ata. So all of a sudden you have two that arrives. with Taʻaroa to create man, all
Donc,
within this pool of Taʻaroa.
la formulation pour expliquer que tout était avec lui, c'est tout Taʻaroa ia i te haamanira ia i te tata.
Okay, so once again, so that's pretty much how I guess you could see in the different phases of structure of this particular creation chant, things develop. And once again, we're coming back to that word hamani, creation. And as we can see, it's more like building blocks, all the elements together, and of course, creating with somebody else, creating man.
Donc, on est dans une forme de création où c'est l'homme qui crée ou qui met en place tout l'environnement. C'est un homme seul qui met tout en place.
So once again, as we talk about the type of creation stories, we have Taʻaroa, one singular entity, one man, at the I guess you could say at the source, at the top of everything else. So this is when we come to questions.
Question.
If we have time now.
We have lots of time.
Okay, good. So
we have lots of time for questions. We have a lot of questions that have come through the chat. And I have a question, a couple of questions before we get to the chat, because I might forget and then we won't have it on tape. But I wondered if you folks could address when you did the song, before you did the Taʻaroa coming out of Rumia, when you did the song, you talked about Papa and Ra'i, and they were separated by Tane, and then they have a child, and that child is Taʻaroa in the egg. Where does that story come from? Because I haven't seen that in Te Wira Henry.
Which one?
The
story of Papa and Ra'i.
No, the song it's coming. Like what I was telling you,
En français, tu peux faire
en français, en français.
La question, oui. La question, c'est dans le chant, on avait Tani et il y avait un peu de mélange, quoi. Hein, c'est ça, hein? Il y a un mélange du chant qui parle de Tani, alors que Tani, dans le chant de création, n'existe pas. Tani n'existe pas. Tani, il apparaît même pas dans le chant de création de Te Wira Henry. Ce chant-là, il a été créé par l'association Haururu pour eux, pour ce qu'ils veulent faire. Mais pour moi, ce chant, ça me...
Okay, so sorry, so this is probably my fault in introducing this particular chant. Once again, it was so that we can come into, I guess, focus in regards to, and since it's a song that our nonprofit Haururu has created, in essence, and written, and so they use the elements that they needed in regards to all the works that they've been doing and all the studies that they've done. So I introduced that song, in essence, to pretty much say, okay, now we are in this environment learning about creation songs, but it doesn't have any kind of relationship to the song that he presented, I guess the creation song. And so he honestly don't know for sure how that element of Ra'i and Tane came in together in regards to that song. So
okay, so that I think no, it's not a fault. It's wonderful. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. But you see, the story we hear from Mo'ohono is on Ra'iatea. And the story we're hearing about Papa and Ra'i and Tane is coming from Tahiti, from Morotum.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if there are two stories, just like there are many different traditions in Hawaii as well, perhaps also in between Ra'iatea and Tahiti. En français?
Alors, Lilikalā voulait juste faire une remarque par rapport à ce qu'elle avait dit tout à l'heure, le fait que la chanson a été créée par l'association Haururu et qu'on avait introduit comme une chanson pour nous mettre un peu dans cette situation, cet état d'esprit. On parle un peu d'éléments de certaines personnes qu'on retrouve, hélas, pas dans le champ de création que Mo'ohono a présenté, qui est celui vraiment de Ra'iatea, des îles sous le vent, mais celui de Tahiti. Et c'est là, en fait, qui était intéressant par rapport à ce qu'elle dit au niveau de ça. So, Mo'ohono wants to add.
Yes.
Non. C'est parce que ce qu'on présente ce soir, on est en train de présenter, c'est pour ça que j'ai insisté. Ça montre l'influence des prêtres des îles Solomon sur Tahiti. Et ce qu'on a récolté, c'est pour ça que j'ai bien présenté les sources. Ce qu'on a présenté, c'est quand les missionnaires sont arrivés, c'est ce qui était présent. Mais ça ne veut pas dire que ce qu'on a vu avant, ça n'existait pas. Fortement, ils existaient, ces champs-là. Mais on a retenu cela parce que ceux qui détenaient le pouvoir sur l'île de Tahiti, il faut être honnête, ils arrivaient de Raiatea.
Okay. So, Mohola said that the stories with Ra'i and Tane you just mentioned, they definitely existed. Okay, so as you talked about Kumulipo, when the missionaries arrived, this was the song creation song that that Mohola shared is the one that they actually said pretty much this is the one that's better, I guess you could say. But you can see also that from Raiatea, they had a lot of influence on the other islands because you see a lot of the same elements elsewhere, like if it is Taʻaroa and everything like that. And that also means that when it comes to political power and things like that, you understand their influence on every other island as well, meaning that Raiatea had some kind of power.
The political power was from Raiatea.
But as like you said in the Kumulipo, there were many different versions and many creation songs that existed. And maybe Horuru, in essence, had their version where they got it from another source and then they used that one. So,
but is that source perhaps from Tahiti itself?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
But we do have other sources. Other.
En français.
Alors, il existe de différents mythes.
Voilà. Il existe plusieurs mythes et c'est sûr qu'à l'époque, on avait déjà à Tahiti, à l'époque, il fallait descendre des Taʻaroa pour pouvoir prétendre être un Inuit.
So, like when you want to become an Inui, you have to be descended from Taʻaroa, right? So that's in Raiatea. You had to be in order to be Arinui. So even all the Ari, all the high chiefs that you find in Tahiti, they all had descendants to Taʻaroa in Raiatea. So like Pomare, for example.
On exemple, par exemple, les Pomare. Pourquoi les Pomare deviennent des Ari Inuits ici? C'est parce que la mère de Pomare, hein? Ouais, la mère de Pomare, elle s'appelle Tetupaiya Ihauviri Itaputapuatea, la fille de Taʻaroa III.
Okay, so for example, Pomare who have their dynasty in Tahiti, Pomare 1, 2, 3, 4. So they were selected to be high chief because Pomare's mom was originally from the Taʻaroa clan in Raiatea. So he mentioned her name was Tetupaiya Ihauviri Itaputapuatea. So in the name itself, you find the origin of the person.
Et donc, souvent ici à Tahiti, on dit que les Pomare, ils n'avaient aucun droit et que c'était des Tuamotu, mais leur droit vient de leur mère.
And so a lot of debate here in Tahiti is that Pomare didn't have a right to be high chief because the father, I guess, is from Ana or he's from the Tuamotu, but the mom had more mana in her title because she was from Raiatea.
Et c'est de là vient leur pouvoir d'être Ari-Inuit.
And of course, all your power as far as Ari-Inuit comes from Raiatea.
Et de même que les prêtres à l'époque qui mettent en place les Ari venaient de Raiatea.
And all the high priests, each Ari had a high priest. They all were from Raiatea.
Si on prend par exemple ceux de Papara, c'était Tupaia qui perd le combat, certes, mais il venait de Raiatea.
So Amo, who was the high chief at the time that the first explorers arrived in Tahiti, well, Amo, his high chief was Tupaia, who was from Raiatea.
Si on prend ceux des Pomare, c'est Ha'amanimani, qui était un prêtre qui venait aussi de Raiatea, qui a installé le système avec justement le fils de Tetupaiya Ihauviri.
And so the high priest, you can say the name again?
Ha'amanimani.
So he was a high priest of the Pomare clan, and so he helped to instill him as the high chief of all of Tahiti. And of course, he's originally from Raiatea.
Okay, wait. I have another question. Hold on, thought, because all these questions are coming in right now on the chat, but they want to ask you. So I want to be fair to them because we're not just us. But Tevita Kaili, Dean of Humanities at BYU, he says, he's going to be talking about Tongan, Taʻaroa. He says, how many Taʻaroa are in Tahitian traditions? So you have Taʻaroa, and then you have the other name that goes with Taʻaroa, or different body forms. How many?
If we...
je vais traduire. OK. So we have, on a une question de Tevita qui est de Kahuku, mais originaire bien sûr de Tonga, qui pose, est-ce que dans les traditions de création, on pourrait dire qu'il y avait plusieurs Taʻaroa?
Dans le contexte qu'on étudie, dans le contexte du mythe qu'on a présenté, il y a un seul Taʻaroa. Et je pense dans les 3 mythes qu'on va présenter par la suite, il y aura un seul Taʻaroa. Il n'y a pas plusieurs Taʻaroa. À la différence de beaucoup d'îles où il y a plusieurs Taʻaroa, ici, c'est un seul Taʻaroa.
So you saw the finger. According to Mo'ohono, in the creation songs that he selected, that he studied, and the other ones that we're going to be presenting after this, there is just one Taʻaroa.
Oh, okay. You have more presentation after this?
Yeah, just smaller parts.
Yeah,
but
okay.
It's like a real brief.
No, I'm just watching time. Here's another really interesting question from Albert Refiti. Who is Jean-Luc Bouquet? And is there any relationship, Busquet? And is there any relationship between this cosmogeny and Paiori's chart for the Tuamotu cosmogeny? Ooh.
Okay, so the first, Jean-Luc Busquet is the illustrator of those beautiful images. So he's an artist. He came from France. He married a Tahitian, and his daughter is famous here in Tahiti. Alors voilà, Jean-Luc Busquet, c'est bien sûr un artiste qui est arrivé de France et qui habite sur l'île de Moria, qui s'est marié avec une Tahitienne, et puis sa fille, bien sûr, c'est Matahari Busquet, qui est Miss Tahiti. Alors, he has a famous daughter here in Tahiti. Her name is Matahari, and she's also Miss Tahiti.
Miss Tahiti.
But he's an artist. He's an artist.
We didn't know.
Okay, Jean-Luc Busquet is a very, very, very popular artist. He resides in Moria. Okay, so that's the first question. The second part of the question, once again, what was it? Sorry.
Is there any relationship between this cosmogeny of Taʻaroa and Paiori's chart for the Tuamotu cosmogeny? Have you seen Paiori? Maybe we should wait until we get the Tuamotu people to speak about it. I don't know.
I can really quickly answer.
Ok, attends, d'abord. Alors la question c'était est-ce que cette cosmogonie que nous avons bien sûr étudiée et celui des Tuamotu, est-ce qu'il y a des liens entre les deux?
Donc il y a une carte qui a été faite par Paiori, Paiori sur les Tuamotu, et qui parle de cosmogonie. Non, c'est pas la même chose. Attention, celui des Tuamotu est différent. Là, on a des éléments qui se mettent en place. Ici, c'est une personne qui crée.
Okay, so for this particular song, Paiori talks about elements, while in this song, it's Taʻaroa. He's the source of all things.
Donc, c'est différent.
So it's different.
Okay, and we will hopefully have someone from Tuamotu to speak about this in another session. So, we're going to leave that for them. Devita Kaili says also, Tumu in Tongan means the peak, as the peak of the mountain or the maunga. So that's kind of interesting. That's a little bit different. Let's see. Wait. Here's another question. Oh no, here is from Kale Nuuhiva. She's saying that we have similar words, po kinikini, po manomano, po panopano. That sound very similar. That's why it's beautiful to hear the Tahitian, because for Hawaiians, it sounds so much like Hawaiian, and I'm sure other Polynesians are thinking very similar. Let's see. So we're looking at
if we can, we have like maybe 10 more minutes. He wants to showcase some of the other different ones where you have the elements and things like that, but really briefly, so that you can actually make a comparison.
No, and then we can come back for questions, and I'll have the questions ready for you. Okay.
Alors, on va continuer, on va présenter les autres mythes qui existent. Et voilà, on va faire ça tout de suite. OK? So I'll come back to... So here. So we left with this one. So this is the second one.
So Tahitian, ce chant a été, c'est toujours Paʻoraro et Raitupu, je crois qu'ils viennent de Poropora, et Tanira de Tahiti qui ont fait ce chant, qui ont chanté en 1822 et 24.
So we had an earlier song, and then now this is the second type, I guess you could say, of creation song, and by these are the authors. And this was also recorded in 1822 and 24, as you can see, and from Tahiti. So 3 different people from 3 different times was chanting this particular creation song.
Et on voit quand même, c'est toujours à l'origine les îles Solomon.
And of course, as you can see by the names, earlier names, they originated from the Leeward Islands of Tahiti. Hein?
Donc, on va pas tout vous traduire le chant, mais on va vous montrer les éléments qu'on peut retrouver dans la seconde version qui appartiennent aussi à la première version.
Okay, so we're not going to go through the whole song. We're just going to talk more about what we find that are similar from what the first song that we had just introduced and this particular song. So we have
Rumia.
So we find Rumia.
Le mot Rumia réapparaît dans ce chant-là. Tout Taʻaroa, tout avec Taʻaroa.
Okay, so we have two and then Taʻaroa also in the second song.
On a aussi Taʻaroa Potintini.
So that's toujours
dans
also the concept of Taʻaroa, the night, and Tini Tini, and Te
Papa. Et Te Papa aussi. Et on va pas là.
Apu, je crois. Ouais, Apu.
Et le Apu, évidemment, la coquille qui réapparaît aussi dans cette version.
And then, of course, having that shell enclosed portion, also we find this in this particular version. So, okay. So these are some of the similar elements that you find. And
les patatos, ce qu'on appelle les patatos, le verbiage, c'est-à-dire quand Taʻaroa, il donne des ordres à Tetumu, à Tumunui et à Papa. Hein?
Okay. So in the first chant, Taʻaroa speaks out loud. You know, he has, I guess you could say, oratory art, and this is called a patao. And so you find that in the first creation chant as well in this second creation chant.
Alors, dans celui-là, par contre, dans cette version, il y a des nouveaux éléments qui vont apparaître, c'est-à-dire Rahu.
Okay, so in the second version, what you don't find in the first version, I guess you could say, the first song that we heard or we studied earlier, these are the new elements that you find in this second song. And you have Rahu, which is a very important word.
On revient après ou
No.
On revient après. Et ensuite, on a aussi Hawaii.
Hawaii, the word Hawaii as an island.
Les hommes sont créés, sont Rahu. Hein?
Okay, and the Rahu of the Atua and the Rahu of the Ta'ata, which is the man. So he's going to now explain what a Rahu means.
Donc, au départ, dans le premier chant, on a vu que les hommes étaient construits, Hamani, et ici, les hommes sont Rahu, créés. On a donc deux versions, deux façons de dire, mais deux manières qui montrent que dans l'autre partie, les hommes sont créés et dans la première partie, les hommes sont construits.
Okay, so we're coming back to the word. So the gods and the men and everything was Hamani in essence, and that means to build. They were built in the first song. Now, in this song, the word Hamani is changed to become a Rahu. And the word Rahu is more of creation. It's more of a creation word.
Donc, le Hamani disparaît au profit du Rahu.
All right, so Hamani, we don't see Hamani anymore. Nothing's built now. Now everything is created.
Et Hawaii apparaît.
And that's when we have Hawaii for the first time, the island Hawaii. Okay.
Et la forme, la méthode qui va dans ce champ pour mettre en place les choses, c'est que à partir de Taʻaroa même, de son corps, tout va se mettre en place.
Okay. And so according to this, he's going to be able to chant it. This is when we understand that Taʻaroa is not building, but from his body, different parts of his body become certain things. So this is the first time where Taʻaroa is still the main character in this creation song, but it is parts of his body that becomes other things. So,
Donc il va prendre comment on appelle ça? Tuamotu, qui est la colonne vertébrale, et à partir de sa colonne vertébrale, il va construire, il va créer les montagnes.
So so from his colonne vertebrale, which is his spine, you have the mountains.
And Tona'o est puro moa. So he prend ses côtes, et il va faire les arbres.
And from his ribs, trees are created.
Tonamanava est parti yata marevarva. So sa pensée va devenir l'espace, va devenir les nuages, tout ce qui est espace.
And from his, I guess you could say, this unconsciousness or his thoughts, you have the space and the clouds and everything that's above.
Et ton aïo est polyphénois, ton atoahua et ton aïo est polyphénois. So, donc de sa peau, hein, la peau va être l'élément rassembleur de la terre.
And his skin becomes the element that brings everything together.
Ses mains et ses pieds vont être les poteaux stabilisateurs de la terre.
His hands and his feet are going to be these, I guess, these structures that are going to stabilize everything.
Donc, en haut, il crée à partir d'éléments, et là, il prend son corps pour créer.
So, in the first song, you saw that he takes all these things around him and then he builds and creates. Or I guess he builds. In this, he takes himself, parts of himself, to create.
And then, évidemment, hein, le mot pour faire apparaître Hawaï, c'est Nana hoi Taʻaroa nui nā tahua oia I matapupu hia I Hawaï. On peut traduire ça de plusieurs façons, mais ce qui est intéressant, c'est que Hawaï apparaît et que c'est Taʻaroa nui est là et il y a les tahua avec lui.
Okay, so then after all these things are created from his body, so he creates Hawaii. Hawaii. And according to this particular first phrase that you see up there, you have chiefs, you have priests, Tau'a, with him as well. So est-ce qu'ils ont créé, or did they create also with him, or no?
Non, c'est pas marqué.
Okay, no. So they're present. Apparently, they're present.
They're present. Ils sont présents. Mais c'est aussi à ce moment-là qu'il va créer les hommes, les dieux d'abord.
Okay. And so for Marahu, we have, this is from the chant, the next phase after creating Hawaii, you have Taʻaroa creating the gods, Te Atua. Right?
Ensuite les hommes.
And then the men.
Toujours avec Taʻaroa.
Yes, and Taʻaroa with Tu. So Tu ma Taʻaroa have created the gods and the men.
Voilà.
Okay. Okay, so that was that. And as you can see in this beautiful picture from Jean-Luc Bousquet.
Voilà, from Jean-Luc Bousquet, hein, la création du monde à partir du corps de Taʻaroa, des mains, de tout son corps.
Right, so creation of the world and the environment and everything, all from his body parts. Okay, so that was the second. So third story is.
So, donc la troisième période, c'est ce qu'on appelle dans Tébrahini la période du chaos.
Okay, so this is another creation song. Okay, so in this one, everything was chaos. All the elements, everything was chaos. Everything was.
Alors ça commence comme ça. Tepiri apiri fenua. Tepiri apiri fenua qui veut dire la terre devient accroche-toi à la terre.
Right. So the land comes to Tipiri, yeah? Piri, piri of the land.
A mão de fenua.
So the stick, the fenua land sticks.
Tereva, l'espace arriva de fenua. L'espace devient l'espace de la terre.
The space becomes part of earth.
Te ore de fenua, le vide la terre.
Vide la terre.
Ouais, vide, l'espace vide, quoi. Hein?
Okay, there's empty space around the earth or land.
Donc là, on a des éléments naturels qui sont là
okay.
et qui stabilisent les choses.
Okay, so you have all these natural elements that are all around Te Whenua.
Whanau te tau o te ao.
So down, you see whanau te tau o te ao.
Who mean
Bouit te ao.
who mean born the periods and the day. C'est bon?
So this is when the day and the night appear. Whanau te tau te po, whanau te tau te ao.
Voilà. On y va. On avance. Hein. Donc, évidemment,
Wait,
on a
wait,
ici...
wait. Go back. Can you chant this for us or say it in Tahitian only? Just Tahitian?
Apiri te whenua, te mau a mau te whenua, te rewa a rewa te whenua, te ore a ore te whenua, te imira te te whenua, whanea te tau o te pō, whanea te tau o te ao, aore auta, aore a tei, aore a nia, aore a raro.
Oh, Maurururoa. Beautiful.
Yes, we have to remember that, okay?
Donc, toujours hein, dans la même stratégie, dans le même système qu'on a fait, on a retrouvé les éléments communs.
So, from what we heard earlier, similarities that we find in the first chant and this third one. So here we're going to list it. So we saw, of course, Rumia exists also.
Rumia,
Tumunui,
Tumuiti, Taʻaroa,
of course.
Apu, Fahitira. Donc, Fahitira, c'est le verbiage. Hein?
Okay, so the type of chant.
Le chant. Hein?
Fahitira. So Apu is putting together?
Voilà, Apu. Hein? Les éléments se mettent avec Apu, c'est la coquille qui se met avec un autre Apu, hein, qui se mettent ensemble. Hein?
So the different elements getting together, coming together.
Le premier Apu, il y en a un seul, c'est Rumia.
Okay, so the first enclosed, I guess, is Rumia. That's the first one.
Mais ici, les Apu, ils sont différents et ils vont se mettre ensemble.
And in this case, there's like, since all these different elements, they're all coming to be enclosed together.
Certes, c'est pas Rumia le Apu principal, mais il est quand même présent.
In the first chant, you saw that Rumia was the very first enclosed shell. Yeah, that brought. In this case, it's not the principal one, but it's still, the name is still existing in there. Okay. And Potota e Papa.
Papa.
And as we mentioned earlier, right, we have Tumunui and Papa. You have the duality in the things and the night of Potota. These are the elements that you find in this third chant compared to the first one that we saw earlier. Okay. So I'm going to continue. And what's new? Okay. Voilà. So,
donc, les nouveaux éléments qui vont apparaître, c'est Atea, donc l'espace.
Okay, so the things that you find in this third one that you don't find in the first one is the appearance of Atea, which is the atmosphere, the space.
Rua qui est le vide, hein, l'abîme.
Rua, as we translate it, it's, I guess you could say it's the abyss. So it's like a big, I guess, Atea on one side and Rua on the other side.
Et ensuite, on a les fameux pots, les poteaux qui apparaissent, qui sont Hotuitere et Anafio.
And this particular chant, Taʻaroa, I guess, has these two columns we call po. And they have names. They have Hotuitere in the front and Anafio in the back. So these two po will be supporting everything that's Atea, and of course, everything that's Rua, that's below.
Okay. Ensuite, qu'est-ce qui va se passer? C'est que Taʻaroa, il va poser ses pieds sur la passe, hein, à Hawaï. Te tiara o Taʻaroa nia te awa te rahura i a Hawaï. Donc Taʻaroa, il se tient sur la passe pour construire Hawaï.
And so this is when Taʻaroa arrives and he places his foot on the pass, I guess. And then this is where Hawaii is going to be created.
Et à partir de là, un système politique se met en place sur Hawaï.
And from this particular foot placing down, we have what we call, I guess, a political system that's created.
D'où le chant, hein, Taʻaroa, hein. Voilà les fameux poteaux, hein, que Taʻaroa met en place, toujours avec ce dessin de mousquet.
So here, what we just earlier talked about, this is an illustration that was done by our good friend Jean-Luc. And as you can see, you have on the left and the right, you have the two po, Hutuitere, and you have Anafeo. Down below is, as you can see, the abyss.
Rua.
That's Rua, and everything above is Atea. Okay.
Ouais.
So Taʻaroa.
Voilà. Et ici, on a Taʻaroa va devenir, on a les pots, les deux pots, hein, et Tiamaine Taʻaroa et Pouroto, et Anafeo et Poumuri et Hotutere et Poumua. Donc Taʻaroa, il va devenir le poteau central avec Anafeo évidemment à l'arrière et Hotutere à l'avant.
So Taʻaroa becomes a po as well. He's the pillar, the central pillar, the most important pillar. And of course, as you mentioned earlier, you have the po Hutuitere in the front, and you have the po Anafeo in the back. And they will be supporting this universe.
Vas-y, avance. Donc, Atea s'occupe de l'espace et Rua s'occupe de l'abîme.
Okay, and so Atea, everything that's above the atmosphere, space, and Rua, everything that's below in the abyss.
On continue. D'où Taʻaroa, toujours là présent et qui est avec les Taʻaroa, hein, il matapupuhia i Hawaii. D'où le chant Hawaii whanaura whenua, Hawaii whanaura atua, Hawaii whanaura ari, Hawaii whanaura tata.
Okay. So Taʻaroa then delivers his speech, I guess you could say, in the oral art, and he's accompanied, as he had mentioned, by the Tau'a. The Tau'a are present with him, right? And so when they create Hawaii, this is the chant. Can you repeat the chant again?
Hawaii whanaura whenua, Hawaii whanaura atua, Hawaii whanaura ari, Hawaii whanaura tata.
Beautiful. All right. Okay, so once again, so that's the end of the third, and then we had just one last one. Okay, and then we can pass the question. Are we good on timing? Is that okay? Are we good?
Yeah, that's fine. No worries, no worries.
Okay. All right, so we saw. Nous avons bien sûr découvert les trois différents. Il reste encore un qu'on aimerait bien présenter et que.
Mais si vous avez des questions, hein? On va demander peut-être s'ils ont des questions là.
On ne peut pas regarder le dernier d'avant, non?
Après, on va leur demander s'ils ont des questions.
Maintenant.
Ouais.
Okay, so he said before we show the last myth, because it's actually a video, and that I was able to acquire with some of the students that we work with. So it's a last chapter that we're probably going to leave at the end, I guess you could say, to kind of sum things up. But he said this is probably a time that we can now, with the three other ones that we introduced, if there are any questions compared with.
So the last video is
long.
And 1 minute.
You don't want questions about the last video? No?
Yeah, we can. You want to see?
Okay, so we're going to change it.
Okay, we go back then. Okay, on va vous présenter un dernier mythe. Ça a été écrit par Taʻaroa, Maro Taʻaroa. On a voulu présenter ce film parce que on pense que ça résume bien l'idée de Taʻaroa avec inuiākea, avec Taʻaroa qui pose son pied sur Vai qui veut dire pied, c'est-à-dire il y a Ra'i qui vient du ciel et Taʻaroa, bien sûr, évidemment, qui est l'être suprême, le Dieu suprême qui crée tout à partir de lui-même. Là, on est dans un modèle de création encore.
Okay, now I gotta translate. So the creation story that is found in the book that was written by Marau Taʻaroa. And we kind of wanted to leave it last because it's actually one I think he likes a lot, because you really understand the role of, I guess, of Taʻaroa being omnipresent in this creation myth story, and where he puts his foot down to then creates Hawaii, Raiatea. And the place where he puts his foot down is called Vai Arai. That means the foot coming from the sky.
The name of the marae.
And it's the most ancient marae that he has studied on Raiatea. So we have the one that everybody knows in Opuata Putapuatea, that's near the ocean. But you have the one that's up in the mountain, and that is the first marae, say, that was created. And so this creation story you can see now in an animated version film that were created by the students in regards to trying to interpret. And of course, we have the Fe'e, the omnipresence of the Fe'e on everything. And like you had mentioned in your presentations, well, the Fe'e is so important. This is where you see in this creation story the importance of the Fe'e. So this is where we can ask Malia to. So I translated in English. No, I'm sorry, I didn't translate in English. Didn't have, but beautiful film. You can see visually what it means, and then we can explain a little bit more afterwards. Okay. The sound is.
Les mots sont les histoires relatant la création du monde.
Oh, I did.
Pour les Polynésiens, une seule perdure à travers les âges, celle du dieu Taʻaroa. Né du néant et couvert de plumes, il créa Papa Whenua, la terre Maui. Un jour, il décida d'arpenter sa création et atterrit à Hawaï. Son pied frappa le sol à Vaiarai. C'est ici que les Polynésiens y érigèrent le premier de tous les marais. Un lieu dédié à la vénération de sa toute-puissance. Les marais étaient des lieux de culte et de vie. Ils célébraient l'existence et la gloire des dieux. Sur ces lieux sacrés, les pirogues polynésiennes furent construites afin de prendre la mer et d'explorer les horizons lointains.
Voilà.
C'est sous la protection de Tumura et Whenua que partirent les premiers hommes. Les 8 tentacules de la pieuvre leur indiquaient les voies de navigation, avec en son centre Hawaï, aujourd'hui appelé Raiatea. Au fil du temps, le marais Taputapuatea est resté le centre religieux et politique du triangle polynésien. Les voyageurs s'y rendent pour voir leurs familles et honorer leurs ancêtres.
Oh, that was fabulous. Manuroa, fabulous, fabulous. Love it. Okay, questions now. Is this good? A good time for questions?
Okay. We're at the end of our presentation, so any questions are.
All right, we've got so many wonderful questions here. I want to make sure from Calais, she says to Mo'ohono, do your marae have pico stones that measure the center of the site?
No, but we have.
En français, en français.
Ah oui, oui. Alors, la question qui s'est posée, est-ce que sur les marais, est-ce qu'on retrouve des pierres picots, des pierres, on pourrait dire, nombril,
voilà, ouais,
qui est utilisée pour centrer, on pourrait dire, une plateforme,
ouais, voilà.
pour pouvoir mesurer peut-être le soleil, des choses comme ça?
Non, on n'a pas cette pierre, mais par contre, on a des pierres fondatrices sur les marais.
Okay, so we don't, in his studies, he said, in his research, he's never seen a pico stone, but you have foundation stones.
And we call that, ofai iri.
And they're called ofai iri, which means the
Darkness, yeah.
Dark
stones.
Stone.
C'est des pierres qui sont assez particulières et c'est ça les pierres fondatrices. Mais aujourd'hui, c'est très difficile de dire quelle est cette pierre-là.
Est-ce qu'il mesure le centre?
Non, il ne mesure pas.
Okay.
Mais on appelle.
So these foundation stones, which in reference to the ofai iri, they're not used to measure the center of the site or anything like that. They're just there because they have the mana of those who build it.
Voilà.
And do your marae, do they track the movement of the sun from the solstice in the winter to the equinox to the solstice in the summer? Do you have Mariah that track those?
La question se pose, est-ce qu'il existe des marins qui mesurent le trajet du soleil quand elle fait le tour du monde? On sait qu'elle se couche et elle se lève sur différents endroits. Est-ce qu'il y a des marins, des patrons de ce genre qui mesurent le soleil, le parcours du soleil?
On a des marins qui sont orientés, ce qui est sur est-ouest, donc coucher de soleil, lever de soleil. Ensuite, on a...
So he says there's many marins that are built where you have one side is where the sun rises, so the orientation means they actually are built specifically so you have the east and west. So I guess you could say yes.
But quand on parle de solstice d'été et d'hiver, hein, je vois ce qu'elle veut dire. Hein, c'est sûr qu'on a des pierres dressées, mais on n'a pas d'études sérieuses sur ça.
Okay. So when it comes to measuring solstice, he said there are many stones that you find that are raised on these Mara platforms, but there have never been really studies in regards to determining if they're used for solstice or not. So
for instance, Tapu Tapu Atea, one wall, the wall that faces east, you measure it, it's 0 degrees north. I have measured it many times, 0 degrees north. The 0 degree north temples in Hawaii measure the movement of the sun from winter solstice to summer solstice and in the equinox in the middle. And we have uprights like at Hapaiali'i where Kale has showed us. And there's other sites that we have in Hawaii that are like that. But I'm wondering if that is something that is done there or talked about, because the last time, Mo'ono, when you took us to Tapu Tapu Atea in the evening, and we were looking east, there was rising Mānoa over the southern corner, which is what's supposed to rise in the south. That's the border of where the sun goes in Hawaii. And also there, because it was there on the corner of Tapu Tapu Atea, right there. So I was like, oh, look, Mānoa. That's similar, but I'm wondering if we have other traditions that we maybe talk about in Tahiti, or in Raiatea, and in other islands as well. So,
je vais le traduire en français, ok?
Yes.
Alors, Lilikalā, elle disait qu'il y avait pas mal de sites qu'elle disait qui est utilisé, qui ont été construits pour mesurer justement le solstice d'hiver, le solstice d'été, et on retrouve ça partout sur plusieurs sites sur Hawaï. Quand elle est venue sur Tapu Tapu Atea, elle a remarqué que le grand marais de Tapu Tapu Atea était orienté aussi 0 degré nord, et on pourrait mesurer le trajet du soleil au lever du soleil. Et quand elle a visité avec Mo'ono, ils sont restés la nuit apparemment, et ils ont vu le lever du Scorpio, qui est bien sûr une constellation très très importante, mais également qui détermine lors de son passage, lors de son lever, où se trouve également le solstice. C'est ça. I think that in a nutshell. So sorry, the last question you had asked was what? What did you ask for the question?
No, I'm just wondering if maybe we look more and we're going to find those similarities between those temples that are 0 north, like that.
Et une de ces projets, c'est fait vraiment étudier un peu plus sérieusement, comme tu dis, il n'y avait pas d'études qui ont été faites. Et oui, ça c'est une des choses que peut-être qui va se faire très bientôt. So you have to come back. Hein,
voilà. Étudiant, student, come here, study.
Well, we're coming back. Yes, we will. Tavita Kaili is saying beautiful and stunning video. So thank you for that. Thank you, Tavita. Where I think many of these the things are being said that are, it's so interesting to see similarities but little differences between, different parts of Polynesia, as we're going to see as we go on. Tavita also says, amazing, all natural elements emerge from Taʻaroa. Wow. I think that's a similar story, that we hear. Oh, here's a good one. Albert Refiti says to ask, is there any relationship between Rahu and Rahui?
Alors, so I'm going to translate everything you said. Alors, il y avait un commentaire, bien sûr, de Tevita qui disait magnifique au niveau de la vidéo, magnifique sur certains les éléments, et de comprendre que c'est Taʻaroa vraiment, de Taʻaroa, on voit tous les éléments qui créent, qui construisent et tout comme ça. Alors, deuxième question, la relation Rahu et Rahui. Est-ce qu'il y a quelque chose qui va avec ça? Est-ce qu'il y a un lien?
Ouais. Probablement que oui, parce que Rahu veut dire créer et Rahui veut dire laisser laisser l'environnement se reproduire, se reconstruire. Est-ce que c'est la même chose? Ben oui, hein, évidemment. Hein. Donc,
Okay.
moi,
From Ohono, Rahu and Rahu, they're related. They're completely related. And it said, if Rahu, in essence, in our creation starts means to create, or Rahui is, I guess you could say, a way of making sure that our elements are recreated. So yes, there is a direct relationship between Rahu and Rahui.
Yes.
No, go on.
So I understand in Hawaiian, Rahui means a nation, but I understand in Tahiti, Rahui is the restriction you put on the ocean to preserve elements and or fish, etc. And then you take off the Rahui and people can go and fish again. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it's not only on the ocean, but it's also on land. It's a restriction that was placed according to the elements. You know, if the environment says, okay, this is the period of abundance, and now at the end of the period of abundance, you have the period of where you really have to be careful because you don't have as much food. So you have a Rahui in that sense. And then you have a Rahui where it is the chief or the Ari imposes a Rahui. Right? So
like a tapu.
He imposes and said, okay, look, we're not having too much fish in our lagoon. I'm going to put a marker, a Rahui, and we don't fish here. And if you fish, then you're probably going to get killed or you're going to be punished. Okay, so you have those two different kinds of Rahui. So you have the one that is on land. All of the Rahui can be on land or on the ocean. It's everywhere, you know. And like I said, so you have one that, according to our calendar, according to the environment, and then you have the one that's imposed by the Ari.
So Rahui is.
Okay, I have to translate all of this.
Oh yes, en français.
Okay.
Le Rahui, ça concerne les hommes. C'est un système qui permettait aux hommes de gérer l'environnement. À la différence du tapu, c'est aux dieux, c'est l'interdit. Donc le Rahui, on a deux systèmes. Le Rahui qui permet aux hommes de gérer, donc d'émettre des Rahui, des restrictions sur des zones pour que ces zones puissent se reproduire, se développer. Il y a Tupu, il y a Hamadef, Ahuia, alors que le tapu, c'est carrément réservé aux dieux. C'est là la différence, je pense, entre. C'est pour ça ce mot Rahui apparaît. C'est un outil, hein, un outil pour les Taʻaroa, par rapport un outil de politique pour gérer un territoire.
And so I mentioned man, of course, understanding the importance of I guess you could be being sustainable. You know, so these values of sustainability have to come back to the forefront because our ancestors, the people, have the Rahui as a way of being able to make sure that we have enough resources for everybody. So that's something that's imposed, according to him, by man. Now the tapu, in essence, that's a little bit different. This is something coming from the god, but the Ari is also kind of like the god, right? So yeah, there's a difference in essence of the Rahui, and then you have the tapu.
The tapu, like you know, it's
taboo.
Prohibited. You can't do anything. But today people just go, when you say it's tapu, they don't care about it, just go.
Voilà, quand il y a un tapu aux temps anciens, c'était carrément interdit, tu pouvais pas, c'était interdit, tu pouvais pas te toucher, tu pouvais pas rentrer, et tant qu'il y a le tapu, ben, voilà. Et le mot, bien sûr,
in English.
Tapu, ça dérive en tabou, hein, c'est la même chose.
In English.
Yeah. You in English?
I have another question. You know, I've often looked at this whole tradition of Taʻaroa, you know, inuiākea, making the world, building the world. I love that one. When Taʻaroa is in the egg, is that Taʻaroa Tefe'e? Or is that Taʻaroa a man? Or an akua that looks like a man?
Alors, la question qui s'est posée, quand on parle de ce genre de création, Taʻaroa, dans l'œuf, on peut dire dans la coquille. On va dire qu'une coquille, ben, c'est un animal. Dedans la coquille, c'est Taʻaroa, l'entité homme. Pas comme elle dit animal.
Animal, non. Ou Taʻaroa, alors à ce moment-là, là dans ce qu'on a, où Taʻaroa, c'est un être divin, ou quelque chose de intouchable, intangible, hein, intangible, hein, you can't see him, you can't touch him, Taʻaroa.
So Taʻaroa, we see man, but I think it's a personification of a divine entity. So so you see man, it's not the man that we talk, I think in his translation, that's what it means. It means in one source, one person, one thing,
One
being
entity.
at the source of it. Yes, exactly.
One entity. Okay.
So it's the thing that is not created, it's there. Or that cannot be created, it's there. I guess that's the best way of translating.
Okay. I like the Taʻaroa in the egg because I like the he'e in the egg because he'e come from eggs. But and the he'e, if you put it in a coconut shell, will climb into it and bring the other coconut shell on top of it. We've seen the video, right? So I was just wondering, but I don't want to change the story from the Tahitian just because Hawaiian thinks something else. No. I will correct my story.
Alors, que la pieuvre, bien sûr, c'est un élément très, très intéressant parce qu'en fait, elle est née d'un œuf, d'une coquille. Et aussi, qu'elle rentre et elle on pourrait dire, elle s'adapte à son environnement et voilà, elle devient un peu... Alors, elle posait bien sûr la question, est-ce que Taʻaroa est également la pieuvre? Et donc, cette chanson lui confirme que c'est non.
Non.
Mais la pieuvre apparaît comme ça.
Voilà.
So, he says that it's not the same, but in the song, it says that it appears. So,
Yes,
so,
right.
I suppose Tuamotu, you know, like he said in the story that Tuamotu, en français. Je pense que Tuamotu apparaît dans l'histoire non pas comme l'animal, mais une représentation d'un concept, d'un schéma conceptuel. C'est-à-dire, c'est l'élément stabilisateur.
c'est comme Taʻaroa, non?
Voilà, c'est comme Taʻaroa, mais celui-là, c'est lui qui stabilise tout ça, tout ce travail-là. Mais à la différence de Taʻaroa qui va créer, lui, il stabilise seulement tout le FNU.
So he just said, like, according to, because he's making reference to what is written, you know, what is written and what is studied, that the octopus, you know, is a part that's brings everything together, keeps everything together, stabilizes everything together. Well, of course, we could interpret it as being as well Taʻaroa, of course. But Taʻaroa is different because he is at the source of all creation of all thing building, while the he'e is the one that keeps everything together.
Et même si, comment elle s'appelle, Teurahendi, mais période du chaos, champ de création, mais on voit qu'on a des éléments fondateurs, des éléments qui structurent les mythes, qui viennent positionner le mythe comme élément fondateur. C'est-à-dire, on a des éléments principaux à l'intérieur.
Okay, so in Teurahendi, as we presented, there are many different creation stories. And he said the elements or the commonalities between all of the stories it's how it's built and how it's structured. Tu peux expliquer un peu, because I'm trying to understand.
C'est structuré d'une manière à ce que on a toujours les mêmes éléments qui apparaissent et surtout l'ordre de.
Okay, so it's structured in a particular order.
Yes.
And the common elements are contributing to this particular order.
Si on n'était pas capable de présenter justement les mythes dans cet ordre-là, je pense qu'on était tué, quand si tu étais un prêtre, tu étais mis dehors, quoi, hein, tu ne pouvais pas prétendre à être un prêtre. Hein, c'est bon?
Tu disais que tu voulais, si tu essaies d'interpréter.
Voilà, si par exemple tu fais un mythe, un prêtre il décide le mythe et qu'il ne construit pas de cette manière-là.
Okay. So the importance, of course, of these creation songs by these priests is that they had to follow this structure. And if a priest did not, he would be not a priest. Sure. He'll be killed, I guess you could say. So the importance of finding these elements, but having that in the structure that he had mentioned gives a credibility, I guess, to the song and the creation story.
Great, great. I want to point out, I'm seeing in the chat that Kalei is also saying that lahui is also a word that means to prohibit in Hawaiian too. I just wasn't aware of it. I haven't heard it used that way, but it's in the dictionary. So thank you, Kalei. But Malia is saying that there is somebody from Tahiti who has a question, and that Malia, can you put that person on to ask the question? Is that what you're saying here?
This is from our president from the Haururu. Her name is Leon Tewira. Yorana Leon. C'est notre président de Haururu. Elle a une question en tahitien. Te hamani?
Te hamani e hupaia o te mani yoti mai i te tai e hupa. Donc Léon, elle dit que te hamana e ohipa c'est hamani. Veut dire c'est quelque chose, hein, c'est un élément, hein, c'est un travail qui a été fait, qui a été conçu avec les doigts, et qui a été fait et ce travail est fait.
Okay,
avec les mains, les doigts.
So this is more of a statement.
Yeah.
So from our president Haururu, she said that the hamani, it's the use of your hands to build.
To build.
So that's the important part. Is to build, to make something, to have a work done. And when it comes to learning, understanding that we learn with our hands on learning.
Yes.
And so that is very, 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 I guess you could say Tahitian, Polynesian. And so when we're building, when we're creating things, and we say hamani, what we were saying about that.
Hamani, hola, mani, yeah? Hamani, mani.
Yes, yeah.
Hamani, the Rahu created. It's different.
Okay, here's Margaret Mutu is raising her hand. She would like to ask a question. Malia, can you let Margaret ask her question?
Sure.
There she is.
Oh, Margaret's on. Yorana, Kiora. So,
Margaret, you have to
the audio
unmute
is off.
yourself.
We don't hear the audio.
Yeah, she needs to unmute herself. I allowed her to talk.
Okay.
Margaret, if you wanna ask a question, you're able to unmute.
Alors, juste pour les personnes qui ne savent pas, Margaret Mutu, ce sera l'intervenante de la semaine prochaine. Elle parlera des mythes de création de Aotearoa de la Nouvelle-Zélande et elle nous rejoint pour, on pourrait dire, poser quelques questions, mais également peut-être présenter ce que nous allons pouvoir découvrir la semaine prochaine.
En anglais?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I was just
So
I was just introducing.
Margaret Mutu is going to present next week. So maybe she can do some observation in her presentation next week.
So,
and she has some.
Yeah, so I was just saying to everybody in French, excuse me, that we had Margaret Mutu on standby and she was going to ask a question, but she's also the presenter for next week, and she'll be talking about creation stories of Aotearoa.
And she said, I don't have a question.
Oh, okay. Okay, no problem. So,
okay.
Wednesday, come and check it out. On sera là, la semaine prochaine.
Okay, then if perhaps it's a good time to wrap up. And again, if people have questions that we didn't answer tonight, and if you would like to have discussed, or if you want to ask me, and I can send it out to Mo'ohono and Hironui, etc. I'm Lilikalā at Hawaii.edu, Lilikalā at Hawaii.edu. And now Malia is going to show us the ending slide, so we close up our show for tonight. We are supposed to be sure to tell all of you watching, please help us serve you better by answering a few questions. And here you can go to bit.ly/Brandt eval. So if you could just copy that into your computer and go and ask. We need to have we need to figure out if we're doing things good or we should do it better, or what's a nice way to do it. If there's something we can do better, fine. And if you really like what we're doing, that's also fine, because maybe then we can go longer. So we'll see.
OK, alors, voilà, c'est pour dire, pour clore notre présentation, Lilikalā disait que voilà, à l'image, vous avez un site, vous allez dessus, et c'est en fait tout simplement de vous donner un peu vos idées de comment nous pourrons améliorer notre présentation. Si voilà, 1h30, si c'est peut-être pas assez, peut-être on ira un peu plus long. Ça dépend un peu de ce que vous voulez et de ce que vous demandez. Et voilà. Et après ça, nous, on fera de notre mode d'ajuster un peu les choses. Tu veux dire quelque chose en fait?
Oui, parce que quand même, ça fait à peu près 2 heures, c'est quand même long, hein, et je comprends que les gens se disent c'est assez long, c'est l'explication, hein, mais il faut bien vous mettre que dans la tête que pour expliquer les mythes, c'est très compliqué, et je pense que pour chaque ère culturelle qui vont être présentées, ça va être très long, et ça va prendre du temps.
So, yeah, I just wanted to mention that, yeah, we could be talking for hours for sure, because recreation song story, there's is open to interpretation. So he gave his archaeological experience, genealogy, his vision of what it means. But like I said, we could talk all night about all the different things that it could mean, or as you mentioned, with every question. And so, yeah, 2 hours is probably long, but like I said, it'll take a lot longer. So he tried his best, in essence, to make sure that some of the strong elements in regards to what he thought is important came out. And he's hoping that we'll find links with all the others as well as we continue on forward.
I am sure we're going to find links, but I wanted to say thank you so much, Mo'onos. Thank you so much, Hironui, for the films, for the speech. I've never heard that part of Te Awira Henry presented so clearly. I loved it because it's the many different ideas within one book. So it's not just one, of course. It's not just one anywhere. But I love the way that you took it apart and put it back together. Thank you so much for doing that.
Alors, Lilikalā remercie bien sûr Mo'ono notre présentation. Elle disait que c'est la première fois qu'elle voit quelque chose si clair, parce que elle a lu le livre de Tahiti des temps anciens. Elle avait vu qu'il y avait pas mal de choses et que voilà, ça prête quand même à beaucoup de confusion. Et c'est la première fois qu'elle avait vu qu'on a analysé, présenté, mais en même temps on a présenté et aussi on a remis un peu les choses en place dans son expression pour essayer de tirer un peu les éléments les plus importants.
Maruru,
we're super happy. Maruru, merci beaucoup à tout le monde.
And next week, we will have Dr. Margaret Mutu from Aotearoa. She's going to talk about the Aotearoa creation, Papatuanuku, and Rangiatea. Now, in Aotearoa, there are many different clans or iwi. I thought maybe 50. I was corrected. They said, no, there's 100. Everyone has a different idea. So we're hearing from one idea, and likely we're going to hear people say, wait a minute, what about this place? What about that place? Same thing in, Raiatea or Tahiti or Bora Bora or, etc. I mean, we could have Huahine, I'm sure has a different idea too. But we're right now, we're moving around. We're looking at what different are saying. And of course, after Dr. Margaret Mutu from next week, the following week will be Dr. Tevita Kaili from Tonga. So we'll hear the Tongan point of view as well. We're going around. I so enjoy this.
Okay, I need to translate.
Yes, I'm so sorry.
Okay. Juste pour expliquer que la semaine prochaine, rendez-vous sur ce même site, à la même heure. Margaret Mutu représente Aotearoa, comme on dit ici à Tahiti ou à Hawaï, plusieurs histoires de la création. Elle va partager la sienne et bien sûr, on pourra bien sûr profiter de ses connaissances pour faire les liens nécessaires. Et après, la semaine d'après, dans 2 semaines, on aura Tevita qui a participé avec ces questions. Lui, il représentera le Tonga, les îles Tonga, et lui également va partager ses connaissances. En tout cas, on est super content d'être là. Et on se retrouve la semaine prochaine.
Thank you to Malia Nabrigo Oliveira for being our tech wizard, making all of this be possible. Mahalo to Kanayo Kana, of course, and to all of our partners, Hawa inuiākea, Oiwi TV, it's just wonderful that we can talk to one another in this time of isolation, but we are not isolated in our minds. We are with the ancestors and they are with us.
Maruru.
Okay.
I think that's the end.
Yeah.